because, Barnes goes in there. He's got 2 30-plus point games in there, including a career high at 39 in Golden State. Just coming out of nowhere, Mike Brown calls more plays for him in that Warriors game than he's called for him all season, according to the head coach himself.
Shoot, just tonight, I called more plays for him tonight than I did the entire year combined.
And it just takes you back, kind of thinking about these last 4 games where he's just been tearing it up. And all of a sudden, when last week we were talking about Harrison Barnes not really fitting in with the style of the Kings office, that kind of you got to go out there and get your own shots and kind of get them within the flow and kind of be a little aggressive while patient at the same time. It's a delicate balance that didn't seem like Harrison Barnes was doing extremely well in terms of offensive production. A week later, now all of a sudden he does. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there has been a concerted effort to get him a little bit more involved. I think in that Hawks game, he got off to a good start, got a little aggressive, played well, hit some shots. Other guys weren't shooting well. It opened up opportunities to call plays for him. And then it was more so of that in the Warriors game because Barnes was just lighting it up. And it's just like, okay, so it was kind of more about with Barnes, it was kind of a lot of that was in the control of the coaches. I mean, I think with just Barnes, it just kind of goes to show what we talked about like a couple weeks ago. It's just about the amount of plays you call for him or not, because in the small amount of games where they have called plays for him and allowed him to kind of do his thing in terms of the offensive side of the floor, he's done extremely well. So it kind of seems to just come down to that at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of, we've been saying it all year that Barnes hasn't looked as well because he's gone from being the 3rd option to the 5th option. And are they utilizing Barnes correctly? If they're not utilizing him correctly, like, should they just trade him at this point? And I think Barnes brings up a good point just by the way he's been playing. Like, do the Kings really need to go through him a little more to win games? 32 and 39 points after he throws up like 2 of his 3 shot attempt games in his Sacramento tenure, and he scores very efficiently. It's like, why aren't they getting more involved? I get it. Brown says it's not in the flow of the offense. Well, maybe they need to make it within the flow of the offense. They still put up 122 points against Atlanta and 134 against the Warriors in games where Barnes was getting plays called for him and where he had over 20 shot attempts a game or in those games. Is it just mismanagement at this point?
Clearly, there's room for Barnes to have a bigger role in the offense. And yeah, I think if you're asking if there's a bit of mismanagement, it seems so clear that it comes down to the amount of play calls for Barnes from the coaching staff. It all comes down to them. They seem to have full control of this. And what was the thing that was different? Okay, well, maybe Barnes was a little bit more aggressive in that first game against the Hawks. But we've seen him be aggressive and have good starts to games and then kind of just peter out for the last 3 quarters of the game or the second half or whatever. It's about kind of tapping into that. And you just mix all that together, you combine some early confidence, maybe some early play calls with some sustained play calls throughout the game. Well, all of a sudden you've got a pretty moderate but sizable contributor in the score column when Harrison Barnes is also, which we've given him credit for over the last couple of weeks, talking about his trade value or what he does with the team. It's like he does do stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. So when you do combine that with the thing that's the most immediate thing you see on the stat sheet, it's like, oh, now all of a sudden he's kind of living up to what he's being paid in terms of what he does out on the floor. Mm-hmm. So it does come down to the coaching staff. It doesn't really seem like Barnes was just like, oh, well, I'm just going to start scoring points. It was clearly like, oh, maybe we should give the old guy a couple more calls.